Hello and welcome back to another episode of Healthy Talks. I am your host for this episode, Joshua, and today we are joined by the wonderful, incomparable Cynthia Weber. Hi, Cynthia Weber, how's it going?
Oh, such an intro. Thank you, Joshua. Happy to be here.
I'm so glad that you are here, and I'm very, very excited for this interview. You have such an amazing journey, and that we spoke last week, so I'm very, very excited for people to hear about it. So let's kick it off. Cynthia, your journey, right, in sales, marketing, and the arts, and now you're in home care. What transpired? What led you to this place?
Sure. It has been a journey for sure. I think I started working when I was 15 years old and, started in everything from fast food to clothing stores to cosmetics to bartending and in restaurants. And I also did a lot of singing and acting and dancing. And it wasn't until I became a single mother that I knew I needed to kind of up my game. And so I went to school and I obtained an undergraduate and a graduate degree. Um, and when I moved back to Seattle after my father had been diagnosed with a cancer, uh, with a type of cancer that had metastasized, I knew that I wanted to spend some time with him, and I had just finished my master's degree. So one of the jobs I had before going back to school was in a building. It was called the Care Center, and it encompassed 2 independent living apartments, 3 assisted living apartments, a full-scale skilled nursing community, and 3 levels of dementia care. So I got a little taste of senior living right before I completed my master's degree. When I moved back to Seattle, I can remember one day looking at Facebook and seeing a post by a woman that I had met while working at this care center. And the post was about the hardest day of her life. And that is when she placed
Mm,
her mother into memory care at the care center that I worked at. But what she said was she could have never gotten through that moment without my help. And she tagged me. And it was like, boom, this is what I want to do. So after getting an undergraduate degree and a master's degree, I went out and looked for a job within the senior living sphere where I could still work with patients who had dementia, people that needed assisted living, skilled nursing. I had always enjoyed every aspect of it. So that is what I did. And I embarked on a community relations director position with MBK Senior Living in the United States, a big, big senior living company, fabulous company. It had great experience. And from there, it's just transitioned into standalone memory cares and continuum communities that have a continuum of care from independent living to specialized memory care. And then a couple of years ago, after I kind of mastered that and saw that there was a new trend and a new need that kept seniors in their home, I got into home care.
mm.
And I have been doing home care for the last 3 years now. I truly love it because I feel it gives our seniors an opportunity to sort of keep their independence for as long as possible.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And for those who sort of don't know, what does home care actually entail? Like, what does it involve? And I know this from talking to other interviewees. It's such a multifaceted sort of care industry. So for you, what does it involve?
I think to understand that a lot of people will always confuse home health and home care. And home health is your physical therapy, your speech therapy, your occupational therapy. Then you have other programs like hospice and palliative care. But home care in itself is that private duty one-on-one care where we can assist that client with all of their activities of daily living, from getting dressed in the morning to taking a shower to making sure that they have meals prepared, transportation, helping them walk from one room to another if they need it. But home care is unique in the fact that we can really customize and individualize the plan of action and the care plan, if you will, for that individual. So they might need help just walking right now, but sooner or later they might not need help getting dressed, or maybe just stand by in the shower, or full hands-on in the shower. So home care can be used in so many different ways, whereas, your therapies are your therapies. Hospice is very specific. So I think with home care, we really get to touch the individual needs of our patients.
Mhm. And tell me, what kind of challenges has it presented you? Because I can imagine that if somebody's really in need of serious care, but they may be sort of hesitant towards it, sort of stripping their independency away, sort of what challenges have you had to face with that type of care?
I think the number one challenge as we embark on someone needing home care, especially if they have some mild cognitive impairment or they've recently been diagnosed with dementia, is denial. And denial can come in two forms. It can come with the patient themselves and with the family members. So sometimes family members don't want to accept it, and sometimes it's the patient themselves that doesn't want to accept it. So I would think that one of the things that we see, like one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest, I should say the toughest parts in initiating that conversation is understanding the denial, how much denial, and walking them through that process. So when people come in and sort of dance around that denial, they're really just enabling that denial to continue. When you start to point out informed decisions that they're still going to have in their care, in their journey of care needs, I think it starts to open their mind and open their doors of acceptance, knowing that this isn't the end right now. Oh my gosh, I have home care, so I'm going down, right? I'm just days away from being useless. So making sure that
Mhm.
people understand that their independence, treating people with dignity always is so important,
Yeah.
and meeting them where they are in their journey, not talking, about all the what ifs, but about how we can help them right here and now. And if they start talking about the what ifs, we can answer those too. But sometimes you just have to meet them at that point of acceptance.
Absolutely. I mean, we chatted last week and we were talking about your background in performance. And I know one thing that you mentioned is that you've been able to leverage that skill of performance in your current occupation in home care. Maybe talk me through about what you meant and how do you transport those skills over to home care?
Well, first and foremost, I look at an aging population who has begun to lose their hearing, sometimes their eyesight, and speaking in a way that they can understand you, that is not belittling. So you're not talking to them like children, but you're kind of becoming the person that they need you to be. So if I was on stage playing a character, that's because that was my role and here was my script. But it also enabled me to say, this person isn't responding well to me just giving them an honest conversation. What they need right now is empathy and understanding. So I'm going to switch roles, and I'm not going to worry so much about the honest truth and the hard talks. I'm just going to talk about I'm just going to be empathetic for this person right now. So I think my background in performance has allowed me to communicate well, seeing your patients at an eye level, giving them a chance to respond, speaking clearly, and articulately is really important for our aging population when the rest of their faculties are starting to fail them.
Absolutely. And you're so right. I mean, performance is all about connecting with your audience. It's about understanding them and what they need. And that is so well done to put that forward in home care as well. And tell me, over the many years that you've been working in home care and being introduced to home care and now working actively in for 3 years, what kind of techniques or programs have you found effective in home care? I know that you have quite a few insights on how to talk to those people and loved ones.
I think one of the most instrumental techniques or teachers, if you will, would be that of Teepa Snow. She has kind of spearheaded the industry in the United States. She was once an occupational therapist who had so much experience with people who had dementia that she began to cater techniques that she learned, and integrated into her care, that worked. And I'll give you some examples. Teepa
Mm.
Snow was great for understanding that if you walk with somebody that has dementia, you're doing a hand over a hand. You're not pulling them and you're not supporting them. You're letting them know. So it happens by putting your hand on top of each other and walking side by side. This way, the person still feels independence and that you're walking with them, not pulling them, which could be very scary for someone who maybe doesn't have the greatest mobility. Another example would be you're in the shower or somebody's refusing to shower. Well, why are they refusing to shower? Is it because they have strange hands all over them? One
Mm,
of Tifa Snow's great techniques was for the caregiver to use the patient's hand to wash themselves. So it's no longer a strange hand, but they're guiding
yeah.
the hands. So those are examples of some of the techniques that Tifa Snow has spearheaded in the industry. Naomi Fail was about empathetic touch in the later stages of dementia. Um, we can talk about, music therapy. We know that this has been an integral part. And then I was part of a virtual reality program in Seattle, Washington, where we used virtual reality as a therapeutic activity for people in memory care and found it to be incredibly useful in subsiding agitation. So, no medication. However, some of the new things that are happening, do involve medication, and we can talk about that. But I think, TIPA Snow techniques, learning to understand how music affects those who have dementia. I recommend that everybody watch Alive. It's a Netflix special. And then, of course, technology in general with more personal assistant devices. You have things like Alexa, where family members can set reminders for medication. They can make phone calls. So we're seeing technology be able to assist in different ways there too.
Absolutely. And just to touch on home care more broader, what is sort of the understanding of home care in the large spectrum of healthcare? Because it seems to me that people kind of put home care on the one side and it doesn't really feel important. And then we have the mainstream care of healthcare that seems to be so prioritized. So where does home care fit in and why should we paying more attention to this?
It's a great question. I think one of the things that we're seeing now is how home care is really integrating with those other disciplines. You might have somebody that has getting home health therapy, is again the physical therapy or occupational therapy. But what happens when no one is there? If they're only coming 3 days a week,
Mm,
are we doing them a service by not having more consistency? What's really interesting about home care and how it's evolved is it used to be the step before senior living. And then someone would have to move to assisted living. But now what we're finding is it's becoming a very integral role within the senior living community. So there's a gray area when someone is in assisted living, they start to have some mild cognitive impairment, but they're not ready for memory care. Yet they need a little bit more care than the assisted living can provide. So home care is utilized greatly in that little gray area as well
mm,
to help someone remain in their assisted living apartment for as long as possible until memory care becomes absolutely a necessity.
absolutely. Very, very good answer. And I just want to maybe touch on, we've spoken about home care being a sensitive topic. Sort of what kind of guidance can you offer families looking towards home care?
It's a great question, and every family operates different. There's so many
Mm,
different dynamics of adult children that might be involved, and then of course the client themselves. So I've always come to the conclusion that honesty is everything. How that honesty comes across is again where you have to judge. Do they need more tough love? Do they need some empathy with this honesty? So, first and foremost, you have to talk about what matters the most to the person who needs the care. Is it that they are afraid of not being able to go anywhere because they can't drive? And then being able to show how a caregiver can be their personal assistant and drive them. Is it they're afraid to leave their home? Well, home care offers an extension of being able to remain at home instead of going to a community. Somebody, many of our clients have been in their home for 30 plus years. They don't want to leave everything that they know. So home care is the key to keeping them in place and then being able to provide what they need. That's how I approach things, and it seems to work really well. But I would also say that it's really important to get the family on the same page, because
Yeah.
it's really difficult for a client who says, okay, she makes sense, and Sarah, my daughter's, on board with her, but Max, my son, he's got a funny look on his face. He's not buying it. So it's really important to get a unified front within the family before approaching the client.
Yeah, absolutely. And what sort of has been your most rewarding part of your career as a home care provider? Any sort of standout stories that you can maybe tell us about?
I think I have to revert back to watching virtual reality take place, and being open to technology and innovation and allowing it into a very a space that has kind of done things. And when I say space, senior care, we've done things the same way for a long time when it comes to senior living. And when we allow this technology and this innovation to come in, it is fabulous to see the responses, some good, some bad. But specifically with virtual reality, we really did a custom approach as to where this client may have traveled. Did they like fishing? So I watched people who were nonverbal become verbal and start talking about their surroundings while they had this headset on. I watched clients um, be able to speak outside of their word salad because of the stimulation that was going on with virtual reality. So I think what I really love seeing is when science opens up doors that can have a profound effect on someone who is suffering from the symptoms of dementia. Um, and then, of course, I think, in big pharma, as we're seeing these decreases, or, medication that can decrease symptoms or prolong any symptoms whatsoever, that's exciting to me. And more importantly, on a weekly basis, I do a program called Time Slips, and it's where we do a creative storytelling process. So for me, I think one of the most exciting experiences that I get to watch is when I work with dementia patients that I see come out of their shell, that are not afraid to engage and be part of something and be allowed to feel valued in what they
Mm,
have to bring to the table. So that's probably one of my favorite things, is connecting with dementia patients on a level where they feel that they are valued, that I am listening. I'll tell you a quick story. We went into a memory care one day, and nobody was going to pay attention to this time slips because somebody was really mad and you could hear him yelling in the background. And I knew this client and I knew he was a stronger personality, but I noticed that the rest of the residents were not going to be paying attention until they knew he was okay. So, whereas most people might try to mask that, oh, it's okay,
mm.
it's okay. I finally looked at this group and I said, you guys want me to go check on, I'm going to say his name was Bob. And they said, yes, please. So I walked around the corner and I looked at Bob and he was throwing a fit. And I looked him square in the eye and I said, and I hope you guys, this is okay. Are you having a crappy day? And he looked at me and he said, yes. And I said, you want to go outside and talk about it? And he's like, yes. So the other part of his behavior was the fact that he was crumpling up paper in his hand and he was just very agitated. So I said, let's get a box of Kleenex. We'll crumple them up and throw them on the floor and talk. And everybody came outside to make sure that Bob was okay. And we ended up sitting in the sun and having conversations about what was frustrating him. So those are the moments for me.
Amazing. And just as we sort of come to a conclusion of this interview, maybe do you have any sort of last words that you can encourage those who want to go into home care, embracing themselves for the reality of what to expect?
Sure. I think one of the true benefits of being involved in home care is the one-on-one experience that you get with the client and their families. In when we look into a senior living space, it's a great place to be. But there's, you have 10 residents, 20 residents that you have to take care of. And I think home care really, really offers more of a connected care scope, right? That you don't find in any other industry or any other setting. It's very intimate. It's something that, you know, you hear caregivers talk about clients for years down the road. And I think that's more rewarding for caregivers too, to be able to be involved in a way that they feel invested.
Mm. I love that. I love that. Well, Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful to chat to you. And yeah, I love it. I think it's so important to give a radiant light on home care and what it can actually do for the communities. And not really side with this idea that it disempowers individuals and it makes them feel excluded. You know, it's about inclusion and individuality and independency. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed chatting to you.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much, Joshua. It was wonderful to chat with you and talk about these things.
So, well, for our listeners, thank you for joining us on another episode of Healthy Talks. Make sure to follow us, subscribe on our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you later for another episode. Bye.
Bye.